We'll continue this plenary the way that we've been doing questions so far, which is on Slido. Monica, what are your thoughts about using parliamentary petitions to push back against various laws?
Oh, look, I have a love-hate and more hate relationship with petitions, if I'm being perfectly honest. Look, the only thing that a parliamentary petition does is gives you a response from the responsible minister. And often you already know what the responsible minister is going to say. So that's if that's your desired outcome, then great. But often, if you're trying to push back on a law that's already being mooted or on a law that's already before Parliament, I'm not sure that they're particularly effective. The other danger I think we get into with parliamentary petitions and petitions on websites like change.org is that it becomes a bit of a numbers game. So I'll give you an example. I might get myself into trouble here. But recently there was the controversy around St Ursula's at Kingsgrove, and you had those young women sort of start a change.org petition and say, we want to be allowed to bring same-sex couples to the school formal. And then there was a counter petition started saying, oh no, the school should stick to traditional rules. And at the end of the day, all that becomes is a numbers game about who's got more signatures on their petition, and no one really cares where those signatures are coming from or how committed a person is to the cause. And I think sometimes we risk that with parliamentary petitions that you don't have control over once they go up. You can almost, you might try to get over the threshold of sort of the 10,000 or 25,000 or whatever it is to elicit a response, but then it might be used by the parliamentarians to see, okay, well, you don't actually have that many numbers. So look, I would say proceed with caution if you're going to be using parliamentary petitions or any type of online petition site. I don't know if anyone else has a view.
This is your world. Alex, what is the appropriate vehicle? So you've put forward a vision of associative rights. What is the appropriate vehicle for creating these positive associational rights? So I kind of by default asked Mark when he was here. Now you get to have the last word on what is the right legal approach for this.
Well, what I talk about in my book as...
Still have a couple of copies out there?
All the copies have been sold today, so it's in high demand. There's still...
But you've got the order forms.
There's still order forms there if you want a 35% discount and purchase directly from the publisher. Sorry, another shameless plug there. No, what I propose is amendments to the Fair Work Act. So if we're talking specifically about positive associational rights to employ staff, to select and preference staff in accordance with the doctrines of the religion or the doctrines of the school or whatever the case may be, then you could make an amendment to the Fair Work Act in that way to provide that positive right for an organisation which is created for religious purposes according to religious doctrine has the ability to select and preference staff in accordance with that doctrine or something like that.
And how does that interplay with the religious discrimination bill that was and then wasn't, but that one which had a whole bunch of positive clauses in it? How would what you're saying interplay with that idea? Will that replace a number of those clauses, or how would that fly?
No, it wouldn't necessarily replace them. I think it could sit alongside them. One of the good things about the RDB as it was introduced into Parliament, and I think someone else said this earlier, was that it made it clear that selecting and preferencing staff on the basis of religious doctrine is not discrimination. So that wouldn't really be suitable in the Fair Work Act, but it would definitely be in, for example, a Religious Discrimination Act, just to make that very clear that it's actually not. It's a kind of conduct which is not discriminatory.
Yes. So that positive statement, this is not discrimination, rather than this is discrimination, but here's the exemption where you can get away with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The cases shared by Nick and legislative changes outlined by Monica raise big concerns. When should denominations be inspiring adherence to urgent advocacy? Now. Done. Now. We've got to start moving on it now. You can.
I guess I would agree with now, except that we need to be conscious of sort of advocacy fatigue. And so sometimes getting people to do something, take a new advocacy action every week or, every couple of weeks, people can get a little bit tired. And so...
Sorry, I'll get the question.
Okay. So you also need to make sure you're getting them to do the stuff that's important and not sign every petition or not email about every issue or everything like that, because you run the risk of them engaging on issues that are of lesser importance and then feeling like they've done their bit and then miss something that's of much more critical importance. So, we're churches principally and not, political advocacy organisations, or most in the room. And so you don't want people to have a little bit of advocacy fatigue either. So you need to balance that for your community, I think.
Absolutely. I kind of work off the rule of thumb that a church probably has got 2 to 3 calls to action a year on a political issue. About 2 or 3 times that you can just rally everyone and say, right, we're going to go do that. And I contest that conversion therapy is one of those. It's worth spending the chip on that one.
Yeah, look, 100%. But exactly right. When you look at the board that I was showing before, there's a lot that sort of has come through, and people can tire of it. So I think Mike's exactly right. You get 2 or 3 a year. Some of them we can predict, some of them we can't. So maybe keep one up your sleeve for the urgent thing that's going to come that we don't have warning about.
Peter and Nick, I'm going to throw this one to you two. Motivating your communities. You've probably got fewer chips a year to spend, and you've got very different cultural contexts that you're speaking into. What is the space for faith-based schools and higher education institutions to be motivating people to be engaging politically? Is there a space for that?
There is a space, but it is a very tricky space for schools, particularly, as I mentioned before, with such a small percentage of active believers in our communities. You can't necessarily draw upon a reliable group of parents who will support your particular views. So, for instance, with the conversion therapy ban, you can't just appeal to your parent population, come and support this, because they will hold a diverse range of views. And so we've got to be careful about that. The same with the ALRC review report as well. We can't just go right out to our whole school community. So you need to be selective about the people that you tap on the shoulder to ensure that they're on the same page. And also you need to protect our school leaders who, as I said before, are very much under the media spotlight. And we saw that this weekend. And we don't want to expose them to that, the intimidation from media and the online intimidation that comes after that as well.
Absolutely.
In terms of engaging our body, I mean, what is the most effective political and social activist in our society? It's usually the university student. The only problem is we don't have enough of them in faith-based institutions. So first of all, you need the numbers. So if your child is going to a secondary Christian school, you should be directing them towards faith-based higher education. That's the first thing. And when you get a body of students, it becomes much better to motivate them. The most active political body that I've seen has come from Campion College, which is a little liberal arts school, but because they have a close community and because they're all intelligent young people doing liberal arts, they're all very politically aware, creatively engaging. We need much more like that. So if you give us the students, you'll find that a lot of the political activism will come naturally out of that without us needing to drive them. We facilitate the debate but they're the ones who get active, and we can support them in that as universities and higher education institutions.
Fantastic. Kamal has asked a question suggesting that he changes his sexual identity to Presbyterian Church. The Overton window. I'm not going to get you guys to comment on that one. Because it's worth it. And you put your name on the question. The Overton window, for those who aren't familiar with it, it's the political concept of the group of things that is conceivable in our current society politically. Too much on this side, it's too left to be conceivable. Too much on this side, it's too right to be conceivable. Question says, on religious freedom, the Overton window is not just moving left or right, it is narrowing. So that we are actually reducing the spectrum of what is a possible outcome in religious freedom. The question is, discuss. Who wants to have a crack?
I mean, my initial thought is, that's why, I guess, in my talk, I think, yes, we need to be battling this with high energy, and really impressed with your last presentation, Mike, about the ways we can do that. But we also need to be thinking about other avenues and the realities we may face if that window gets too narrow, creative solutions. We're going to continue to live out our faith, and we're going to take the consequences if those consequences increase, but let's not make it easy. Let's try and think outside the box a little bit as well. And maybe that comes with political engagement. Sometimes our political engagement, we think this is the only way to do something, when there's actually 50 ways to do something. So don't limit yourself. But it's an area I've been involved in 10 years, and I don't see a very clear way through it, to be honest. So, not to discourage people, but to realize we've got to change things up a little bit, and this is probably the time to do it.
I was just going to say, I think actually, I agree that the Overton window is narrowing, and I think, but it's been narrowing almost at our own gift, because I think that churches and faith leaders have been a little bit too willing to compromise. Oh, okay, well, we'll meet you halfway, and then the goalposts move, and we'll meet you halfway. The ground that we've lost is all ground, I think, that we've conceded, or has either been taken from us or we've conceded. So I do think that that's a message that there's, in terms of negotiating religious freedom and negotiating a religious discrimination bill or whatever it is, I do think that there is a point where we're going to have to say, we're out. We're not going to compromise our way to getting something that's unacceptable just so we can get something through. So I do actually think we need to prepare ourselves to say, no, you can have your religious discrimination bill and you can put it up there, but it will go through without the support of religious leaders. I think we need to actually be prepared to say that, which is a big call, but otherwise things are just narrowing even further.
How do we stay motivated to get out of bed tomorrow? I'm not going to assume your, I am going to assume your faith position, and I'm going to say, because God is in control and Jesus is King. But I think we've already all talked. There's a lot we can do. This is not a lost fight. Another question, I can't find it, but was saying, approximately it was saying 1 to 10, what is your confidence that we could get out of the New South Wales government something better than Victoria?
In conversion therapy?
In conversion therapy, sorry.
Oh, look, I think we can, and I think largely owing to the candidate forums and the promises elicited before the election. And I know I've grabbed the microphone, but if I can just talk about hope for a second. It was 50 years between the passing of Roe versus Wade in the US and its overturning in Dobbs. The people who were fighting and who began the pro-life movement died before the Dobbs decision, right? Her name escapes me now. The woman who started the March for Life died 12 years before Dobbs was decided. It's not necessarily for us to see the fruits of our labours in this sphere. It might be the work of your lifetime and mine to fight this, so that future generations can reap the rewards, so that a generation yet unseen can praise the Lord. Like, that's what we're doing here. And so we may not see victory in the next year, the year after, the decade after. That's not our business. We're called to be faithful.
And with some slight apologies to our non-Christian friends, but I'll let you do the translation too. As I said, we have been fighting for the right to disagree with each other, haven't we? Yes, we'll be providing a link to the live stream later on, once we'll be able to fix some of the technological issues that we've had. Could a religious vilification, so moving to religious vilification, so this probably more Monica and Alex, but feel free. Might a religious vilification act censor religious expression, therefore become this is going to name the person anyway, become a quasi-theocratic imposition of secularity? But I'm not going to name Kamal this time.
As long as there's a higher education exemption, because we need to be able to debate religion in that sphere and in society more generally, yes, that's a real risk. As soon as you outlaw the critiquing of religion, you outlaw freedom of expression and debate. It can be horrible consequences.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to go with the lawyer's answer, which is it depends.
Well, I want it, yes.
So, I mean, there are really two areas of any potential religious vilification legislation which would set limits around how pervasive it is. The first is the kind of threshold for it to be enlivened. So one of the problems, for example, with the Tasmanian legislation is that it sets a very low threshold of offend. So what we'd be hoping for with religious vilification legislation elsewhere is higher threshold, like harass, threaten, intimidate, incite, or something like that. That will make it harder for the vilification law to come into play. And then the second aspect would be a robust defence to the claim of religious vilification. So the defences in typical legislation would be something along the lines of the statements or conduct was in good faith for artistic, scientific, educational, public good sort of purposes, and that would mean a claim would be able to be defended. But as many of us know, the process is often the punishment. So you'd want that high initial threshold to prevent vexatious or frivolous litigation.
Okay. Many of the questions, as I think, got answered by by speakers later on. So there are so many questions. Forgive me that I can't get through all of them. Basically, a couple of questions, effectively talking about the separation between the ALRC report and what's going to happen to the Sex Discrimination Act and a religious discrimination bill. So what happens if one gets passed before the other, the theory is that they both get presented at the same time and get passed at the same time. But what are the risks? And Nick, I think you've been thinking about this as well. What are the risks if one comes up well before the other's conversation has started? Or is it, no, sorry, I've named Nick.
No, I just don't see how it can work if they're not done together. I think we've seen, or if you're going to do it, you've got to put the religious discrimination bill in first. Otherwise, you're going to have a situation where all the schools just become untenable until it's done. And we're done putting our faith in politicians assuring us that it will get done in the next month or 3 months. Or, so many times these promises have been broken. So we're not going to take it on faith that they'll do that first and then they'll fix us up. It's got to be done at the same time, or religious discrimination first.
Yep.
The only risk I would see with having the religious discrimination bill first is that you might have a situation where the government gives with one hand on the religious discrimination bill and then takes away with the consequences of the ALRC and the amendments to the Sex Discrimination Act. And what will be difficult is, particularly if faith leaders accept and welcome the religious discrimination bill, and then if the government tries to then remove the exemption on the Sex Discrimination Act, I was talking before about sort of campaign fatigue and things like that, people might not understand. If you go, okay, we've solved religious discrimination, and that's the message that you get in March, and then in April you start complaining about the removal of exemptions, it's a very hard narrative to be playing and to be playing publicly and also to be explaining to people. So I think we have to insist that they come as a package deal, because otherwise we risk congratulating the government on a Wednesday and then asking for more on the Thursday. So I think we need to be insistent that they're presented together. Otherwise they don't get support.
A last minute question that just came in is about misinformation legislation. What's the likelihood that misinformation legislation will censor Christian perspectives online? Alex, have you looked at the misinformation legislation? Not much?
I've read the submission that we made.
Yes. We'll take that one a little bit on notice then. And if anyone else has got a throw in for misinformation. The simple reality on the misinformation legislation issue is what is defined as misinformation. So the misinformation legislation is saying that big tech needs to censor misinformation, stop misinformation from happening. And there are huge penalties. So big tech, being hugely risk adverse, is going to start censoring anything that they start thinking is close to whatever the government defines as misinformation. And if they take the initial proposal that we've had, that includes religious vilification is misinformation. So you can guarantee that our big tech companies are going to instantly respond to any comment about religion as risking vilification, and so we'll just see this shadow censorship regime coming through. My one comfort on misinformation is the fact that the loud voices on the left and the loud voices on the right both hate it. And so it seems to be a bill with very few friends in its current iteration. So that is again something that we're keeping an eye on and we'll be engaging with when we see its next draft as it comes through.
Of course, and with a lot of churches streaming their services in addition to, since COVID and in addition to all other offerings, given that they're all on digital platforms, it also risks the removal of some of just online church ministries.
And that is a question that actually came in earlier. Should churches be thinking about, given what happened in Victoria with the CEO of Essendon and based on it, should churches be thinking about what they have online now? Should they be starting to think about pulling stuff down from online? We might leave that one. Nobody wants to put their names to that one. Can you give a really big thank you to our fantastic speakers?